Today, we have some exciting announcement to make. As you know, Appranix provides cloud application resilience with cloud infrastructure backup, cloud native data resilience with integrated backup and replication, and recovery as code. With that, you can recover your cloud application environments really, really fast. We call it as hyper fast, and that allows you to reduce your cloud infrastructure spend drastically in certain cases. Now, we are taking this cloud application resilience to the next level, right? And that involves allowing recoveries to happen cross tenant. So you have your tenant, which is your primary domain based cloud account where your production applications are running. Now you can take the recovery into another tenant across to another cloud account, maybe hosted at a service provider, a managed service provider that is helping you to recover in the case of a ransomware attack. Along with it, we are also introducing capability to do proactive application resilience using our cloud infrastructure backup with drift analytics. Right? With these two capabilities, we are pushing the boundaries of cloud application resilience to the next level. As you know, just to refresh of how cloud application resilience is actually achieved, is that just imagine you have a distributed, dynamic, auto-scaled application environments as complex as this one. This is a real-life picture of one of the financial services customer of ours. What Appranix does is that it creates a cloud time machine. Conceptually, is very, very simple with no agents. So it's great for protecting your auto-scaled cloud applications. And it does continuous discovery and dependency so that you don't have to worry about how your applications were really modeled or created and architected. And that cloud infrastructure backup capabilities now allow you to look at the drift between what we call a timeline in the cloud time machine. You could mark one of the timelines as a golden timeline by looking at all the configurations and the data and the application, making sure that particular timeline is the golden. And now, if something changes, you could compare that configuration from the infrastructure backup with that golden timeline. Right? Along with that, we continuously backup and replicate, as I mentioned, completely incremental, agentless, and auto scaling. And we only keep the immutable data copies. And those immutable data copies now can be kept somewhere else in another account, another tenant. Third, about recovery as code. Appranix automatically creates the recovery as code to a point where Appranix automatically programs your recovery environment with a single click. And that way you can ensure that recoveries are hyper fast as well as guaranteed, because all the workflows, all the dependencies, all the nested information about creating the application environments are automatically taken care. So now with these capabilities, you can achieve levels of resiliency, levels of application resiliency like never before. Right? Just imagine that you are running your production region applications in one of the cloud accounts in one region, let's say Virginia. And you can now take, this capability has always been there, you can now take this application environment to a region of your choice. Could be from Virginia to California, Virginia to Oregon, right? And with updated capabilities, you can now introduce additional regions on the fly based on the requirement. Perhaps the reason to go from one region to another region could be because your cloud cost could vary depending on the region type, right? Or you could add one more additional region just to have additional levels of resiliency. And if you want to optimize further, you can take away a region from the levels of protection as well. Now, in addition to that, you can go to a third party managed cloud account across a tenant, which is dedicated for you for your production environment, but hosted by another domain, completely isolated from your production account. So, this really helps in terms of achieving in cases where your complete cloud account has been taken over. Now, what do? Right? You cannot even get to that older style backup products, backup consoles. That is not the case with Appranix. With Appranix, you can pretty much copy and go to another tenant to recover all your applications, all your data, all the services that really run your distributed auto scaled cloud applications. So even across the tenant, you can add, remove your regions based on the requirement in terms of performance, in terms of cost. You can optimize it on the fly. Just imagine now taking data to another account itself has been really difficult problem. Now on the fly, you can change the regions of choice, right? Not only that, we call this is level 3. We can do level 4 resiliency as well. But this is only applicable for applications that are running on the containers because the hypervisors are different, the services are different. But if you have a very contained applications running on Kubernetes, we can help you move from one cloud to another cloud as well, right? But that is only one side of the story. That is all great. It helps with respect to your failover. But if you start running your applications in the recovery regions or in another account, how do you really come back to your production region? For example, let's say your production environment has been taken over by cyber attack, and somehow you manage to get the keys back from ransomware attack guys while you kept your applications running in another account. So your negotiating power has only increased. After getting your environment back, your data, the new data, now has been running in the third party managed cloud account. You want to come back to your production environment, you can do that very easily with Appranix, right? So it is not about just failing over or even going back in time and recover the applications and data and the environment, but it's about coming back as well, right? This is to enable you to leverage all the power of the hyperscale cloud platforms. One of our Fortune 500 customers pretty much used that a few weeks ago by going from Singapore all the way to Northern Ireland, right? Enabled to buy these hyperscale platforms. They were able to bring back the entire environment when the region went down. In Ireland, with all the 1800 resources across 100 plus resource groups in under 22 minutes. Unimaginable, before the cloud. As I mentioned, proactively, you can look at your resilience. This is very, very useful in the cases where you have identified and made sure that everything is running okay. You made that as a golden configuration in a timeline. Now you can compare that with the newer timeline, which you might suspect that there is something fishy going on, maybe some kind of a cyber attack or outage that may be occurring. You could compare the configurations from our cloud infrastructure backup. And if you suspect some kind of a fishy thing going on, you can pretty much start the recovery or the failover to another isolated environment or completely in a different account. Just keep it running, get the applications ready to go just in case, right? Proactive. resilience is now possible with Appranix. With that, let's do a quick demo as well. So for that, we are going to use two different accounts, right? We call it a cross-tenant demo. So this particular application is actually running in this AWS environment here. It is running in Northern Virginia, so you can see OpenEMR with all the infrastructure, RDS instances, the load balancers, all of that are running in the production region, in the case of your main production environment. Now, we want to go all the way to another account so that your production environment was running in the Virginia region. Now you want to go to Ohio, and this account is actually hosted in another domain, randomsen.com, which we created for the demo purposes. So it's a completely different domain, completely different cloud account. And no instances are running, right? None of the infrastructure is hosting any of your applications right now. Only the data is being replicated at the moment. And that part is happening right here. And the setup is very simple, as you might have noticed on Appranix. It's a very simple way to look at things, right? Across all different regions of the cloud. This particular cloud connection, if you look at the cloud connection itself, your primary application is running here, Appranix Demo Cloud, and Announcement DR as a Service Cloud is receiving the data right now, right? And there you can have all kinds of different regions configured. So this particular one happens to be configured 4 different regions, right? And Appranix automatically discovers those region configurations as well. This is very, very important because not every region has all kinds of capabilities or the number of services running and ready to go for you. So it is important that a system like Appranix discovers continuously not only your production region resources and the capabilities of the cloud provider, but also the potential recovery regions as well. And you might be running other applications in those regions. So even in the case of a brownout, only a partial application failover is necessary. You have to know how the target environment is running as well. Target cloud connections are performing. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to use our typical demo application called OpenEMR, electronic medical records application, and you can see the resources for the OpenEMR, about 10 instances. As you know, Appranix automatically reverse blueprints your application environment. So in the case where your application environment within your cloud account could be running hundreds of load balancers and hundreds of instances and security groups, internet gateways, whatnot, all kinds of resources. But for your OpenEMR application, only 2 application load balancers were required, and that type of calculation, the dependency mapping, are all done automatically by Appranix. So you have about 48 resources. You can configure the policies, and for the demo purposes, we have configured a daily and a weekly policy. You can very easily configure anything you want. So if you look at the policy themselves, you can have a number of copies in your production region here and a number of copies to another region. So that's very, very simple configuration from the data copy and retention purposes, right? So as soon as you configure all of that, Appranix automates in terms of creating the cloud time machine. The cloud time machine looks very simple. So if you drill down, you'll see how the resources and the data are being managed between 2 different accounts. So you can see here we have 3 levels of resiliency, I would say, where your production application is running in Northern Virginia region, all the 10 compute and all the resources and so on. And that is also protected with a cross region within the same account. So you have the primary cloud account, and within the cloud account, you can replicate from your Virginia region to Ohio region as well. And that is fine. Now, with the capability that we just announced, you can go across another cloud tenant where from Virginia to another tenant, it's hosted by the announced DRS service cloud, and it's going to be failed over to Ohio US East 2, right? So to do that, all I have to do, uh, I have to just go and click recovery. Now with this recovery, you can see cross-tenant recovery. Uh, you can now achieve level 1 resiliency, we call it. Within the same region, you can create an isolated environment, or you can pick your specific resources, or select your applications using tag, or you go to another region itself from Virginia to Ohio. Again, you can do the same thing, or completely to another account, to another DRSS cloud account, and I'm going to go to Ohio East 2. And you can also again do brownout type of recoveries, select specific resources, or use tags to isolate your application components only for those resources that you want the recovery done, or the entire assembly, and put it in a new VPC, isolated environment. Again, that could be other applications running separately. So you could do all of that. To recover, press that one button. Make sure you give permission by typing recover in capital letters. If you are doing testing, just enable that schedule reset, which will automatically delete all the resources after the recovery is done and confirmed. Press the button. Right? That will automatically take care in terms of going from one account to another account with all the resources. Now what's happening is that your cloud application environment is being programmed automatically based on the production environment in another tenant account, right? All the compute, all the subnet network ACL association, whatnot, it's about a number of resources that are going to come up based on the resources that are available or being used in that production environment. Now let's see what's happening in that account itself. So for that, let's go to a different browser where we have announcement.com, and this is the account in which the new instances will come up. And if you look at what's happening in that account, cross-tenant recovery is happening, and that automatically is creating all the resources, right? If you look at what's be coded here, if you look at visualization of the environment itself, you can see all of those resources and the dependencies, all of them are automatically coming up. You didn't have to do anything except pressing that button and giving permission with the recover statement. All of the configurations, including your private IP addresses, that is between, let's say, a database and your VM running your application. You don't have to worry about the IP address mapping, or in terms of which resource comes up first, which resource comes up second, third, and so on, sequencing. All of that are automatically taken care of, right? So that's the level of capability. If you think about it, the recovery is almost 50 resources, and 35 resources are already complete, right? While this is happening, let's look at the drift thing that I was talking about. So if you go to the environment that I was highlighting, you can look at the cloud time machine. Let's pick the same application that was very, very consistent. If you look at the time machine, you can compare two different time line items. In this particular case, October 1st, 2022 has been marked as a golden configuration, and we are comparing against, let's say, 22nd February, where we suspected some kind of a, anomaly in the configuration, so that I can decide whether I have to start the recovery or not. So that particular thing is automatically done. And if you look at the resources here, a number of resources have been changed, because looks like two compute instances have been added, along with two other compute instances that have been changed as well, right? Likewise, if you look at the security groups, there have been new security groups added, right? You can drill down and see what those security groups are, and you can decide what really happened there. The network occult. So if you go into looking at network ACLs, you might see some changes with respect to what really happened within those ACLs. So this particular ACL has been removed, right? So those are the changes that you can identify from drift perspective and decide proactively whether you have to really um, you know, start the recovery process. Okay, so in terms of pushing the cloud application resilience concept, the idea that when you move to the cloud, or when you have your cloud native applications running on the cloud, you can achieve a level of resilience or levels of resilience like never before. So you go to the cloud for agility, but stay there for application resiliency. With that,